But when you get to have a microphone like this, you can't help but go.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, when I mock that ASMR, though, people get really angry at me because they're like, you know, it really helps a lot of people with stress, helps a lot of people go to sleep. I'm like, well, I can still find it disgusting.
You know what I listen to? Brown noise when I go to sleep. I turn my phone, I've got it downloaded on my laptop, and I listen to brown noise.
What does that sound like?
Like just constant.
So, but white noise is when you're on the wrong channel, right? And then, so what's brown noise?
Brown noise has been linked to help with people with overactive brains. It's sort of like, takes out all of the other crap out of it. Like, it's sort of like white noise as things, but they're using it as a different term. They're trying to, I think it's used more for ADHD type stuff, but I just like it. So if I'm going to sleep late, I don't hear anything around me, like wake me up in the middle of the night. So I just use it like that.
And that makes a lot of sense. Like we put on white noise. I guess it might be white noise. It's like a rain sound for my sons. They both sleep with that on so that we can, you know, fart around and bang into walls and whatever we're up to, yeah. And they don't awaken. Like, I'd say that we're having sex, but we're not. You know.
You're reading books. Oh, before we go anywhere, Luke, I just want to say how despicable you are for not washing your legs in the shower.
Okay. Hold on a second. Do you wash your legs in the shower? Like, actually wash them?
Nah, I'll tell you what I do. I go like this. I go one rub.
All right, swipe.
One swipe of either side, and then I'm done. Like, I don't bend over and get right in there on the legs, but yeah. Nah.
What's there to get right in on? It's a surface that's flat that like sees very little, like it sees maybe some sweat and some dirt. When you rub it, do you just wipe it with your hands, or have you got a washer?
No, just my hands. I don't actually use any shower gel or anything. I just use water.
Me too. I use soap on my face and just a cleanser, and that is it. There is no soap on my body other than that. I mean, I wash my hands as well, you know, but not in the shower. But in the shower, like, and people might find this crazy, I don't put on any soap. I just find soap really drying. I find it like, yeah, I don't like it. And I don't know if soap's that good for you. Like, I don't know if most soaps are that good for you. I reckon if you can go without it, and I don't wash my hair either.
Oh, do you not? How does it say so glossy?
I give it a solid scrubbing once. Thanks so much for saying that, firstly. And I give it a solid scrubbing from time to time. Like, I just like it with my fingers.
Yeah. Okay. That's good to know.
And people say to me, like, I don't wash my butt with soap, my arsehole. I don't wash it with soap. I just use, I open the cheeks and let the water run in, which a lot of men don't do apparently, which I find disgusting, but I don't use soap. I don't see the point of that. I like water can do the job.
Do you not get in there with, like, I get in there still with my hands though, and then wash in there?
Oh yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, I do too. Yeah. I just don't use soap.
Yeah. Can have a bit of fun, you know, tickle around.
Soap could make it, you're right. Soap could make it slippery, slidey, and you could just have a little, you know, whatever. But anyway, here's what a start. I think there's me and Ryan Rose, I was on his podcast a couple months ago, and we started off talking about withholding ejaculation. That was where we started. And now today we're starting with anals.
I know. Crazy.
Let me introduce you a little bit, Ryan, because, of course, welcome. Let me introduce you a little bit so people who know who you are, and we'll get right into it. Ryan Rose is a holistic coach who talks about healing the gut, healing trauma, and speaking your truth. His story has inspired thousands. So today I thought I'd have him on to talk about who he was and who he now is and how it all came to be. Ryan, g'day. Lost him already.
Hello, man. Thank you so much for having me on.
It's a pleasure. You know, I look at old pictures of you, and you were this muscular monster of a person, very intimidating looking, roided up. You all have the typical Gold's tank on. Who was that guy?
That was a very angry and misunderstood man. I believe I was doing all of that as a bit of a protective mechanism for myself for many years. So growing up in a bit of a rough area in London, it was a bit of a fight or flight sort of response every single day. You sort of go around, you have to look around the corners, see if anyone's round there. If you're going under an underpass, you're checking out to see if there's a group of gang or anything there. So I think over the years, once things started to happen in my sort of younger years, I created this man that would always feel protected. So I created an armor around me of muscle and tattoos and looking intimidating. But really, I wasn't. I was a sensitive, emotional boy. And I didn't want to live in that environment, but it was a way as a protective mechanism for me and a way for me to get out of myself. So even though the photos looked intimidating, I wasn't really like that in person. All my friends would say that, you know. Don't get me wrong, there was part of my life where I was naughty, but it was different. You know, I wasn't doing it, and that wasn't my intention. It was always as a protective mechanism.
Yeah, it's a funny idea is that muscle is armor.
Yeah, completely. Like it was pack on the muscle, and the more muscle I had for me was the more I could push people away. So, and also the tattoos. Like I forget they're here. I forget I'm still covered in tattoos. Completely forget it. Yeah. And people will just sit with me at a table and be looking at my neck or looking at my arms or my hands, and I'm like, what are you looking at? And I forget I'm covered in all these tattoos. And it's you sort of forget that there.
You're kind of a bodybuilder, or you're just a buff guy? Like, were you competing in competitions at all, or?
Yeah, I was doing strongman, and then I was obviously, well, beforehand, going right back, I started doing boxing and Brazilian jiu-jitsu at a very young age. And then I was getting into strongman competing. So I competed sort of just at a really small level in the UK as more of just a thing to learn and to get stronger with. And then I went into bodybuilding after that. And I just sort of went back and forth, going between martial arts, boxing, all of that sort of stuff. Yeah.
And were you on performance enhancers? You were using steroids for a part of your life?
Oh, for sure. I think I started using steroids around 17 years old.
Wow.
Maybe more. Maybe 16, 17. I think I started doing oral tablets and stuff. And I started taking them on and off then for around till I was about 28. And then I had a heart attack. So I had a mini heart attack, more of an angina attack more than a heart attack. And at the time I was in a really bad place. So my mum was struggling with cancer. I had loads of things going on in my life, and I didn't know how to deal with my emotions back then. So I would just do lots of drugs, get involved in lots of crime. And the only thing I knew how to do was train my way out of my emotions, train my way out of anything that was bothering me. So I'd take more steroids to get me out of myself for further and take more drugs. So I actually had a bit of an angina attack or mini heart attack. I don't know what it was that they actually called it. But I went to the hospital, got checked in, checked my heart, told me what happened, said I needed to rest, go back, stay in there for a checkup for a couple of days. I checked myself out and went back out and done loads of cocaine. So that was sort of my sort of life at the time. It was sort of a self-destruct button just to get me out of here. And actually ended up doing that, and then going back in those cycles until my life just went, right, you've got to sort your shit out or you're going to die. So it's up to you.
Yeah, and was they think that the heart attack was linked to the steroids? It probably was it?
I'd say it was linked to my whole life, a mixture of all of it. Not looking after myself properly,
right.
Steroid abuse. I would say abuse, not just use. You know, people can use PEDs and they can use them, you know, they can get bloods, and it depends on your genetics and depends on how your body utilizes hormones. There's some people that use them still at Olympia stages and are okay. And then there's some people that go to a gym, use them twice and have problems with their heart in seconds. So I would say definitely that was a huge percentage of why that happened. And then the drug use, stress, not being able to tune into my body or anything like that, you know?
Yeah. So it's interesting that you had a heart attack and you didn't think, and there was all this stuff going on in your life, and you didn't think, oh, I have a problem now. You went out and furthered the problem. You dug deeper into hell, as Jordan Peterson would say. And I want to know when you realized that you had a problem and you needed to fix it.
Yeah, I get asked that a lot. And I don't believe I have one particular catalyst that it was like, right, now you've got to do it. It was, I don't believe many people go to make big changes like this until they've gone into severe, deep holes. Like hitting that rock bottom moment people talk about. And that's where you make the change. You either make the change from there, or you go further into that hole until you're ready to make that change, or you stay in the hole. And for me personally, I just had this mixture of drug abuse and drug addiction. I was addicted to pharmaceutical drugs and addicted to cocaine and alcohol and other components, other drugs as well. And when I started to realize, oh, I'm actually dependent on these drugs now. When I don't take them, I get really bad withdrawals. So I stopped taking them. I ran out of them. I couldn't buy them anymore. And then I started getting these withdrawals, and I was like, what's going on? I was shaking in the car. I was like shaking and quivering, and I was like, what? Like, why am I feeling this way? I didn't have a clue why. My friend was a doctor. I called him up and he said, you're having withdrawals, right? Like, you need to take this seriously. You're having withdrawals. He's like, go to an A&E, go to a doctor's and see what happens there. And that was the really scariest moment, because I never experienced panic like that sort of fear, that panic attack that I was having, and these sensations in my body that I couldn't control. And it was from there I was like, right, well, I don't want to feel like this anymore. And so I started to delve into everything. And then I've been on that journey ever since for the last 10 years.
Yeah, wow. And what were the first steps that you kind of took? I've had a look at your website and how you work, and one of the main things you talk about before healing the gut is really healing trauma, or at least dealing with what's going on mentally with you, because you think that you would say that they're all interconnected. So where did you begin this journey? I know you began from rock bottom and sickness. And so what was the first thing you kind of did? Did you stop going to the gym? Did you start taking probiotics? Like, what did you do?
You know what? Going back to that time, like going back into that mindset, I was such a different man, different human. It was so long ago now. I started looking on forums, trying to figure out what are these drugs that I'm addicted to? How are they affecting my body? How are other people getting off them correctly? And when you go to, when you're using pharmaceutical drugs as a way to numb yourself, especially things like benzodiazepines, which Jordan Peterson was ill with as well, and we had a connection when we spoke about that because he went through the same experience, was that when you come off those very suddenly, the withdrawal effects are horrendous. They are horrific.
Right.
They're, very, very said that we've got a problem with it at the moment, and everyone just says, oh, you just come off them, you'll be fine after a couple of weeks. But that wasn't the same for me. I was using 100 milligrams a day, which is enough to sort of knock out a horse. But because I was probably the size of a horse, it didn't really affect me, and I was just sort of this numbed, dribbling mess most of the time. So when I started coming off these drugs slowly and figuring out how they were affecting my body and my brain, and how they're affecting my neurotransmitters and how my GABA was being affected from that and everything else, I started to figure out what can I do here? What supplements can I take to help me with this? What can I do with the gut? Oh, the gut's linked to my brain as well. Okay, so the gut's linked to my brain. Started doubling down on my gut and changing my diet. Okay, gluten may have a problem with my intestinal wall, and dairy could also be a thing. Let me take those out, see how I feel. I started to feel a bit better. Then I got a stool test. I had no microbiome diversity, like none. I was using a functional doctor at the time to go through the stool test before I went into any of my own training. And she said to me, I've never seen in my whole years like a microbiome diversity like this. It was all rock bottom, like zero. Wow. And that's probably from the drug abuse and all the other things I used. And it was that from then really was the birth of, okay, well, I'm going to look into this. And then I went back to uni and studied microbiology, and then into psychotherapy and all of these other things. And from there, it was birthing like, oh shit, I'm really fucked up. Like, I'm really fucked. I've got all this addiction, all this trauma, my health, my body, the steroid abuse, the tattoos, the heavy metals. All of these things were affecting my body and my brain and how I was reacting to the world. And I had no idea. I was just bouncing around off all these triggers. So it was just this unraveling slowly.
And are you saying that like the heavy metals were from the tattoos, that there's a link there?
Yeah, there is a link. There's a lot of heavy metals in tattoo ink and tattoos in general. So I had to go through a whole detoxification process of getting a lot of the heavy metals out. My heavy metals were through the roof. But then that's also probably linked to drugs, steroids, food, everything else. I was using everything. I had no idea about any of that stuff back then. And I was a McDonald's boy or takeaway boy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild to think, like bodybuilders and strongmen, they were the original biohackers. They were always finding ways to do things quickly and get things done. And they're very, very smart. And they, forums and talking in their community about how to get things done. It's funny to come from that world and go and kind of use the skills that you'd learnt to get as big as you possibly could and feel as good as you possibly could, to take those skills and go, now I'm going to actually get as healthy as I possibly can.
I think that's really common.
Use those.
Ben Greenfield,
right?
The biohacking like godfather, really. He started this journey from bodybuilding. He wanted to be a better competitor.
Yeah, and he talks about how sad he was as a bodybuilder. Like, he'd just lay around on the, like, other than when he was working out, he'd just lay around on the couch, depressed as shit. Muscular as hell, but like not in a good place.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, some people find their solace in it. And just for me, it took me away from myself. It was more of a distractive mechanism more than anything, an unhealthy thing for me, this comparison wheel of constantly comparing my physique to someone else's physique. It just, for me personally, it wasn't helpful for me.
Yeah. Now, were you drinking at the time too? You loved boozing?
When I was when I was going through this stage, or
back in the day, yeah.
Well,
I'm interested in your gut microbiome, like the lack of diversity. I'm interested in, like, could we also tie it back to alcohol too?
I believe so. There was a drug that I used. I've never spoke about this before, but there was a drug that I used when I was doing bodybuilding called DNP, right? And if anyone that knows out there DNP, they're probably like shocked faces. But DNP is a rat poison, but it speeds up your metabolism by about 60% or something ridiculous like that. Like if someone uses T3 or a thyroid sort of inhibitor, that would increase your metabolism, and that's what some people will do. But I was using DNP. I tried it anyway, let's just say. But I done it for a week, and you would sit there sweating on the sofa while your metabolism is doing everything for you. You're losing like 2 pound of body fat a day. It's ridiculous. And it's rat poison, right? It's rat poison. So I would say that added to my microbiome diversity not being the best for sure. Yeah. And even though I'm laughing about it, it's the things I did to my body in order to be validated, in order to feel like I'm enough.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I went and got a brain scan from Dr. Armin. I don't know if you've heard of this guy. He's like a famous psychiatrist. He did a brain scan on me. And when we had a sit down, he was like, I go like, sometimes I'll go and smash like 20 beers in a night. And he's like, okay. He's like, here's his rundown on alcohol. He was like, it's basically a sanitizer. It's an antibacterial, right? You'd use it as a clean, like you use Jim Beam as a cleaner. You totally could. And that's what it does to your microbiome. It just obliterates it. And I'd never thought about it that way. And I was like, so you're telling me that like once a month or every 2 weeks or whatever it was that I was doing this to myself, I was like just blasting my gut and effing it up, clearing the slate completely, and not in a good way.
Completely. Yeah, for sure. It just clears it. It's it's damaging in many ways to intestinal wall lining and decreasing that microbiome diversity. I just don't, I try not to stay in those dogmatic views of extremists. Like if I want to have a glass of wine, I'll have a glass of wine. If I want to go out and do that with my friends, I will do that, but I will pull it back a little bit, and I won't go to the extremes that I used to. So it's just like maybe one or two. You know, it's a big difference than having 20 or 25.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that too. Well, that takes a lot of self-control too. I feel like I don't really want to have one. I want to have 7.
Yes. Yeah, I get you.
And so that's the problem. Like, I'm kind of in this in between right now where I'm like, I'm interested in no longer drinking and getting drunk anymore. I'm interested in it, and I'm hearing so much research about it, and I haven't gone pedal to the metal in a long time. And I'm thinking maybe I'm through the arse end of this. Maybe I can actually stop. And every time I have 1 or 2, I'm like, 7 like sounds real good right now. Like, and how out of interest, how do you manage to keep the discipline with that?
I think if you're class yourself as an addict, or you like that word feels comfortable to you, if you've been addicted to drugs or drink, I think you're always going to be an addict. That doesn't mean you might be addicted to the substance that you are using that's causing a problem in your life, but you'll always find something else. So, you know, for me, when I stopped drinking and stopped drugs, it turned to food. And then food was my addiction. When food get taken away and I could only correct my gut health through good food, shopping became an addiction. And then it would move. It would constantly move. It's like whack-a-mole. Once you pop one down, another one will pop up. And then you pop another one down, another one will come up. And it's just this constant like playing of that. So now I find even when I go and have a glass of wine, there's that little switch in my brain that goes, oh, maybe just one more. Go on, you know you want to have one more. And then I'll go, okay, I'll have one more, and then I'll have one more. And then my brain will start to go, okay, look, now you're going on to that mode of wanting more. And then my brain would always go, I want drugs after that. I want more alcohol, then I want more, I want drugs. So I have to keep a limit on it for me, for sure. So I always have to, you know, I have to be really careful. So when people are constantly going, oh, go on, have another drink, you'll be fine. That peer pressure and that feeling of community, like people you want to be a part of, I just go, no, I can't. And then if people really badger me, I just say to them, you know, I used to be addicted to all of this.
Yeah. And then when you tell them that, how does that make you feel, and how do they react?
I feel when I get past that and I turn it down, the old boy in me will feel left out, will feel like, oh, okay, now they're going to view me differently. Now they're going to look at me as I'm boring or something along those lines. All stories in my head. They're just carrying on with their next drink. How they receive that, sometimes they carry on, they keep going. But then it comes back down to boundaries. It comes back down to like, my no is no. You know, it comes back down to like, this is important for me, like, no. And my close friends know that, so it's all good. But the people that don't know, you know, partners, friends, or partners' family, they don't know your background. They will keep pushing, and you feel a little bit, oh, it's your partner's family, and they're asking you, go on, have some of this food or have some of this drink that doesn't necessarily serve me. I'm like, there's a part of me that like feels, a bit pressured into having that. But again, it comes back down to your boundaries and just trying to find a kind way of saying your no without lying, which is very challenging and difficult and a practice.
Yes, it is interesting, isn't it? The way that people look at you when you say no to drinking more, even if you've not been addicted, and in the past, it's the only drug that if you turn down, people will ask you why.
Completely. Yeah, man.
You know, say no to cocaine. It's like, yeah, fair enough. It's like you say no to a beer. It's like, what? What's wrong? What happened to you?
Yeah.
And I think that there is a stigma, obviously, around there's a stigma around people who've been addicted. It's like, wow, what the fuck did you do? You know, what did you get up to, mate? You know, which is like,
completely.
You know,
and cocaine's one of those drugs as well that you'll buy it, and before you've bought it, you're already giving half away to your friend in a toilet cubicle. Like, it's the only drug that you sort of do that with. cocaine. I think you don't do that with anything else. You don't do that with any other drug. It's like a social thing for a lot of people, like cocaine. They go into a cubicle and they go, do you want some? Do you want some of this? Do you want some of that? That was my experience anyway. Like, it was more of a social thing to do it. You'd give half of it away. I was like, it's crazy. You wouldn't do that with anything else.
Well, you'd want people to be involved with you, you know. It's not misery loves company, but it's close. It's like you want other people to be on it too, so we can all feel the same thing and talk each other's head off about ourselves. Yeah,
completely. And going back to your question there, Luke, about my microbiome diversity and what I did to bring that back up was, I spoke to you about this earlier, was I done my own fecal microbial transplant. So I used someone else's poop to repopulate my gut, which is, everyone sort of squirms a little bit when I talk about that.
Yo, I want to talk about that. So how does that work specifically? You get sent poo from a lab?
Well, that is how some people do it. I didn't do it that way. So I looked into fecal microbial transplants. The donor of someone with a good microbiome diversity goes into yours and then repopulates your gut if it takes well to it. So I done a lot of research around this when I was studying some microbiology, and I went to one of the best treatment centers in Australia, and I actually had a consultation with one of the doctors, and I found out his protocol, like what he did, how he did it. They use capsules or they do it through a colonoscopy. Some do it through an enema. And I was like, right, okay, well, I just wrote all this down, and I went back, got my partner at the time tested, her stool tested, and find out if we would be compatible by microbiome sort of diversity. Well, she never had antibiotics in her life. So we basically, I just learned how to do it with saline solution and blending up her poop in the morning. So, I'd go and we'd get a little box. This is, I'm maybe going a bit graphic. If you're eating your breakfast, put it down.
Do it.
Right? Do it. So there's I'd have a little box, and she'd go and poop in it in the morning, bring out her poop, put it in the blender. Never use that blender in my house, Luke. And put the poop in the blender and a bit of saline solution. And there's a sort of like a mixture that needs to be like sort of done. You blend it up, put it into an enema bulb. And then I would insert that into my bum, and I would sit on my side, on my left side. And then I'd stay there for a few minutes, and then I'd put my legs up the wall, and then I'd move to my right. And the reason for the movement was the fecal matter then could go round and up into the colon area. And through 2 days of me doing this, now I've maybe skipped a little bit here, but before this, my energy levels were so low. I was struggling with chronic fatigue so bad that when I would walk down the road for more than maybe 5 minutes, I would have to stop, and I would be dizzy, and I'd sometimes have to hold on to like the railings next to me because I was so weak. Wow. I wasn't able to train for 2 years. I lost a lot of muscle. I was very ill. I was nutrient deficient. I had big bags under my eyes, and I wasn't able to absorb food or anything. I was in a really bad and dark place. And within 2 days of me doing this fecal microbial transplant, 2 days, all my symptoms were gone. I had all my energy back, my energy back to like this weird, like I had 10 coffees of energy compared to what I was like. And I slowly over time, I was able to absorb and absorb more food. And I was just feeling so much better. So that really then again took me down this route of there's always another way to figure something out. There's always a way. If I went down the route of that's it, that's my gut done forever, then I would have gone down that route and maybe taken medication and then ended up with a colostomy bag or something along those lines. And it was actually through trying this first that really was a big game changer for me.
How long did you do that for?
We done it for about 2 weeks straight. So every day, 2 weeks straight. So, part of my routine would be getting up, doing yoga, meditation, and having my partner's poop. So at the time, we was really connected. So
very connected.
Very, yeah.
There is a way that there exists in pornos, I'm sure, where like she shits in your asshole directly into it. That's.
I just love how that took that turn.
But that's got to be a thing that like, there's got to be a subsector of like Pornhub that has that in it. And like maybe we're all judging them, but maybe they're in a spot where they don't have a good diverse microbiome.
Maybe that's what it is, really. It's just fecal microbial transplants, you know, like.
Right.
That's all it is. Maybe that is a subsection of porn. I stopped watching porn a while ago, so I have no idea what's going on around nowadays. But yeah, man.
Did she ever feel the pressure of having to poo? Like, or is she fairly regular?
Well, she was sort of regular every morning, and I think at the time she was, you know, she saw me suffering. She saw me struggling, and she knew I was really into research and trying these things on myself. And I went through the whole allopathic treatment of going to every single specialist, every doctor, being diagnosed with IBS and incurable gut diseases. And she saw me struggling with that. And I think she just wanted to help. And we tried doing the stool test and seeing how her diet, if she had any parasites or anything that would normally cross over. And she was a good fit. So for me, I don't recommend anyone doing what I've just suggested, by the way, at all. There's a lot of research that's come out through fecal microbial transplants where the person that has been the donor was overweight and the person that had it was slim. This is where all the microbiome diversity transfers came from about obesity, was from fecal microbial transplants. The person that had it that was skinny put on like 50, 60 pounds from the microbiome diversity of the other person. And it's the same for mental health. If you've got more diversity that is linked to low serotonin or anxiety or imbalances there, that could cross over into your gut and into how you feel as well.
Yeah, wild. I mean, that's amazing, actually. I wonder if you could take on people's personality via their poop. Like, let's just talk about like your mates, our mates, the inspired unemployed. Like, if they could sell their poo to other people, blend it up, saline solution, put it in that person's butthole, and that person is then funny all of a sudden.
Yeah. Well, you know,
that's a movie. There's a movie there.
There's a movie, and there's also probably a weird specialist business opportunity.
Yeah.
Luke?
Yeah, where you get like your favorite actors later. Shit. Yeah. I think that's genius. People would love that. I mean, people would love it who are sick, who just want to smell their favorite actor's poo. And then there are people who are like, who are like, I want to be like this person. I want them inside of me in a different way to the way that that's usually heard, you know?
Yeah, completely. I feel like there would probably be an opportunity for everything.
Exactly. Let's talk about what you do, your coaching. Let's talk about, you know, somebody comes to you. Tell me how it usually works. Let's just say somebody came to you like you. That would be interesting. So like you come to you like you were when you were lost and at the bottom. What are your first steps with them?
That's a great question, Luke. And I feel it's so different. I know it's such an annoying answer to have, but it's so different for everyone. But if I was sitting in front of me and I was wanting the change, I would, at that time in my life, I would have needed physical modalities to work with rather than emotional, because I wasn't ready to look at that. I didn't believe that unresolved emotional wounds could affect my physical body at all. So I would want to look at supplementation, food and dietary changes, routines, meditations, yoga, psoas work, lymphatic system stuff, and adding in a routine that would feel comfortable into my lifestyle at that time. What can I implement? Now, if I was working with me, I was so desperate for change and I was in such pain that I would have done those things. So I do work with people now that are also in that feeling of stuckness and uncomfort and pain, and they a lot of the time don't want to be around anymore. So they're willing to try anything. So we start really small with the physical stuff. Let's just try maybe some supplementation, maybe just, you know, your basic minerals, because their body's probably in a bit of a fight or flight response, burning through them very quickly. Can we then start to maybe get stool tests, find out what's going on with their microbiome diversity, How is their body digesting gluten, for example, or any parasites, any mold, anything that's going on there? Can we address that, look at that? And once they see results and they see numbers, especially if they come from an allopathic mindset, we can then start to pick apart those things. Okay, well, now they're seeing changes. We can make small changes to their diet. They're starting to feel a little bit better. They're starting to have a little bit more trust in the process with me. And through that trust of the process with me, that we can then start to peel back what maybe led them to that area. So why did they go down that route of drug use? Where did that come from? What's their life script? So I do something called a life script with clients, trying to figure out where they were born. Everyone talks about peeling back the onion layers in this world. They talk about peeling back the onion layers from Shrek, I believe. But I like to know where the onion is from. I like to know where the onion has grown, where it is, what's around it, what's the environment around it. Before we even delve into the onion, I need to know what's the environment of that onion. So I need to know about their caregivers, their upbringing, and everything else. And then slowly over time, we're peeling back the unresolved emotional stuff. And through that, and through them sharing these things and having these aha moments to why they may be feeling anger, why they may be feeling shame or guilt or not feeling good enough, and getting these links together, they can start showing up in new ways. So that's a really short summary of how it sometimes may look with people, but there's probably a little bit more to that.
Yeah, it sounds great though. A life script. It's super interesting to think of your life as a story, and I think it would be very helpful for a person, for anybody. I think of my life as a story often, and to look back on the story that's there, and to tell it, to be able to physically say it or to write it down, to have a physical life story. That's really interesting. I'm not talking about biography, autobiography. I'm talking about like, who am I? Where have I come from? Who were the people that like brought me up? That's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, completely. Like, Luke, I would love to ask you, what do you feel like some of the one or a cluster of the biggest challenges that you went through in your childhood that made you who you are today, the man you are today? Do you feel that there's a link there?
The challenge, I think, for the boy that I was that I was one of five, the last of five, and I struggled to be heard. So I always wanted to be heard. It was my dream. You know, I was like, please listen to me and take me seriously, and don't look down at what I say as, oh, you're so you're so like little, and you're so silly. And so to be heard and respected was just, it still is huge to me, and it's probably huge for that reason. You want to piss me off, condescend me. You want to piss me off, tell me what to do. You know, like I can get raucously angry at somebody if they address me in the wrong way. You know, is that kind of what you mean? Like that stuff?
Completely. And thank you for sharing that with me. I find that that also would have been really uncomfortable for sure, but also was your edge. That was your edge. That's your edge now. And that's also been now your greatest gift from that. Now you are an entertainer, a comedian, an actor, and, and you make people laugh, and you can also make people cry, and you are seen and you're heard completely. So it's become your edge now. So sometimes people look back at the things that were challenging in their past, and they think of them just as negative, but they're also the things that can create the edge for us out of life. Do you think, like I heard Jimmy Carr talk about this on Diary of the CEO, and he said Michael Jordan was a hard worker in the gym, and hard worker, always there before everyone else. But he had this drive to be enough, to be the best. If he didn't have that drive from his childhood to be the best or to be good enough, I don't think he would have got to where he was, because he had that drive in order to do that. That was his edge. So just like that with you, your edge was like, I want to be seen in front of these other four men in front of me that have already like started their lives. I want to be able to be and be seen for that, you know. And I think that's amazing that you've catalyzed that, captured that.
That's
use that.
Or I've captured it, yeah. And what about yourself? Can you tie stories from your childhood that have affected who you are and the story of your life now? What do you see as your edge?
I didn't expect that to come back on me. I will say that mine was about being enough. I needed to feel like I was enough. I didn't feel, and when that's a big word to use. What does enough mean? So for me personally, it meant I didn't feel like a good enough boy. I didn't feel like I was a well-behaved boy or a good boy or all the words that you get swung around. And I felt low in self-esteem and insecure. And I grew up in a predominantly multicultural background of London. And I was, a bit different to everyone else because I was this blonde-haired, blue-eyed English kid, whereas a lot of my friends were all Jamaican, African, Greek, Turkish, Middle Eastern. And I was actually the one that was different. I was the minority sort of there. So right. I always felt like I wanted to be different. I wanted to be like them. I wanted to be not like I was. So that shaped me and it created an edge for me that I wanted to prove that I was enough. And how did I do that? I made myself interesting in the sense of through life. I guess I had interesting circumstances happen in my life, but also I became useful to people. So I learned information and learned how to relay that to help people in order to be valued. So people liked me. Oh, this guy's interesting. Look how much information he knows. Whereas really now I understand, okay, that's me trying to validate my little boy that's inside me. So that became my edge and became something that actually now I'm very grateful for. So I don't shun it.
You also painted yourself.
Yeah, I did. I painted myself. Yeah, for sure. I did paint myself. Yeah, I was also probably scared as well. Scared boy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really funny way of thinking about things that I'd never actually thought about before, is thinking about who, like, the narrative that you told yourself as a kid. My narrative was, I'm not cool enough because I don't have nice clothes and things aren't just effortless to me. Like it's amazing to look back at all the kids who were around me at school. I went to a private boys' school, but I had a scholarship because my father was a minister. So we were on middle income at a fancy school, right? And so all the kids were really well dressed, had really cool clothes, big houses. And I was always ashamed when I got picked up by my mum in our car. I was like, I hate that we have this car is embarrassing. My parents were embarrassing. My house was embarrassing. I wasn't cool. And everything just seemed so effortless to everybody else. And I look back now and I was thinking I look back now at those kids that I thought were really cool. And I was like, isn't it funny that I thought I wasn't cool to those kids? But in many ways, I still do that today. I still look at people and go, look at how effortless it all is for them. Look at how cool everybody is. And I'm at home trying to get to sleep, beating myself up about a stupid joke that I shouldn't have told, It's still that same narrative of you're so uncool. What are you doing?
I find that so interesting.
But it's a narrative.
Luke, on the outside, and me looking at you, I see this really confident, funny, good-looking man that's doing so well for himself, got a beautiful family and got all these amazing things. But just like everyone else, you have insecurities and that feeling of imposter syndrome sometimes also, and I think that's amazing that you share that, because other people can look at that, and including me, and be like, oh, look, that he's still got his things that he's working through as well. Yeah,
you've encouraged me though. I don't think about stuff like that. And I think it is good to consider and think about the narrative that you were telling yourself back then is still here today. And it's 30 years on. It's It's time to maybe think about that in how you think about yourself, because how you think about yourself and the narrative that you tell the world about yourself is a huge portion of the why you feel the reality that you do.
Completely. It's the reality that you create in childhood, right? And as Gabor Mate says that, it's the ages of 0, even in the womb, all the way to 12, that creates the story that we then live on for the rest of our life. So a part of our adult life, or the mid part of our life, is unraveling that story and coming back to who you are, what you even like, and what that means to you, because sometimes we're still living off old stories. So time to start writing your own a little bit, as cheesy as that sounds.
Yeah, I wonder if I often think about my life as a story, like you've been talking about, but I don't think of the story told already. I think about the story that I want to tell. So the story that I'll tell my kids. Often I think about how, like, if my career is not going great, I'll want to quit. I mean, I have a crisis of confidence about once every 4 months, I'd say, where I'm just like, I want to throw in the towel of my career, right? And it just happens, and then something will come along and lift me back up with a bit of hope, and I'll snap out of it. But I think about often like quitting, and then I think about the story that I would want to tell my children when they get to an age that they could understand this story. And the story is that I want to tell is a man who, despite the odds and despite endless rejection, carried on and got to the top of the mountain anyway. Do you deal with that too? So it's not just the life script of the past, but also the life script of the future?
I think you've got a bigger anchor, because it's the story that you're wanting to tell your children. It's like, that's a real big anchor. My anchor now is, I feel when people do this work, sometimes they might feel like, I just want to help people. I feel like that's a really standard answer. But if I'm going back down to it and I'm getting to the root of this, why didn't I do this? I think I do this because I really wanted to help my mum. So I couldn't help my mum in childhood. My mum struggled with mental health stuff, but we didn't know that stuff back in the late 80s and 90s. It was just less talked about. And I knew my mum was sad, and I knew my mum struggled with ups and downs. And I would always want to help my mum in some way. So I then became an expert in trying to physically help someone feel better. And I feel like that's probably the root of where that comes from. I've also heard the same thing with comedians, where I just listened to this podcast today on the way here, Jimmy Carr. I do resonate with it a lot. And he said that, I love it. There's a myth in comedy that if you do comedy, it's because you're depressed and you're trying to make yourself feel better. But actually for him, he said, and a lot of other comedians, it was that who was in the household that they were trying to cheer up. Was it mum, or was it dad, or was it another sibling or something that they were trying to cheer up? So I found that really powerful in that, because actually I realized I did that with my own mother. I was like, I wanted her to get better so she could love me and be with me the way that I would expect back then. I didn't know that I was doing this. It was all very subconscious, and my mum did love me in her own way. Because she was sad, she couldn't be there the way that I maybe would have needed at that time.
Wow. It's always interesting to think about trying to help your, it's like this, the student becomes the master, with your parents when you help them. Like when I try and help my dad, like recently he came over to the States and he has mobility problems through one of his legs, got a sore calf. It's probably vascular. And I was helping him walk, right? I was helping him, teaching him, to make sure that he can walk again, to be healthy enough to walk easily. And I'm like, isn't this just the reversal? You taught me to walk.
Wow.
And it's not that bad yet. It's not like that bad yet that he can't walk at all. He just struggles to walk for 10 minutes, let's just say. So we went to the zoo and he would stop and sit and we'd just keep on walking and leave him there and circle back around and get him. And it's funny. And I was teaching him all this mobility stuff to help him. And I was like, isn't this just the complete role reversal where I teach you to walk?
It's extremely powerful and amazing at the same time, isn't it? Like, that is crazy that we these role reversals do sort of happen, and our children end up hopefully getting to a point of looking after us. It's huge. Yeah. I loved that when you're putting on your stories of your family. I thought it was so heartwarming. It was so nice to see. And was that your mum that you tricked into someone? Who was it? Someone dying. Who was it who died? That was
my mother-in-law.
I don't know if it was a mother-in-law. Sorry. Yeah. Was she over at Christmas at the same time? Yeah. I swear it was over the same holiday period. Yeah.
She lives with us. Yes, it was during Christmas.
Okay. Yeah. I thought that was great. Did that become a trend from you, or was it already a trend?
No, it was already a trend that I wanted to jump on. I just thought it was the funniest trend I'd ever seen, was people telling their families that random celebrities had died. And their shock, it was like Anderson Cooper or John Bon Jovi. And these people were just like, what? It tickled me. Yeah. So I had to get Tracy with Kyle Sandilands because she just loves him. And her reaction kind of broke my heart. She was like, no, he didn't. He didn't, did he?
So it was really, really funny. It was amazing. I do love your content. It always brightens up my day, man.
Thank you, mate. I want to ask you about, speaking of great content, you usually take the Inspired Unemployed boys away for a retreat of some kind. Could you just tell me what happens or what it is? Yeah, what is it?
We do it every year as like a reset for January, because the boys are we're all really busy, but the boys are mad busy. They work hard. So it's like, it's a reset time, just to no phones. Probably the only time throughout the whole year they're going to be away from their phones for 3-4 days. That's quite a big statement. Wow. We never are away from our phone for that long. Like, no looking at it whatsoever. Yeah. No distractions, no reading a book. There's just meditation, yoga. This year we've done a bit of plant medicines as well. And we just use it as a time to connect with each other, but also to connect back with ourselves. So it's a mixture of like meditation, silence. We use silence for a couple of days, which is really hard with the boys because they're super funny and they're always mucking around. Oh my God. But it's on a beautiful retreat and it's just stunning. It's just really, really nice. But it's so funny, like, especially like if you do some plant medicines and then go out into nature and stuff and everyone's just having like their own little journey. It's just really, really fun, really heartwarming, but also can bring up a lot for them because they're not distracting themselves anymore. So it's a great way for us to address that, and even though they look at me as a practitioner or facilitator to help them, I mean, I've been friends with them for years now. So it's like, there's that friendship camaraderie as well as everything else.
Yeah, I love that. On the subject of young men, not that they are like in this, there is a huge proportion of young men who are disenfranchised, still living with their grandma or their parents and playing video games in the basement and don't have a real job, have no real sense of community, and therefore, like, no girlfriend, nothing like that. I wanted to ask you, because I think that this is a problem. We know that this is a problem, and you're a type of person that I think could help young men in this situation. Maybe if there are any people listening out there who know young men who are in that situation, is there anything that we can do for them, tell them, any ways to help them?
That's a lovely explorative question, I guess, and something I've not really thought about. I would say that a lot of the boys that are doing that, I would say from an emotional perspective, and this is not me, this is using a generalization brush here, are probably missing the connection with their fathers.
Mm.
They're missing the connection and the deepness that they can get from their father. There's a beautiful book called The Wonder of Boys, and it's a really beautifully written book, and it's about why it's so important for boys to have the things from the mother, the nurture, the care, the love, the attention, but also the direction, the focus, and the leadership from their dad about life. If we look at it from a human evolutionary psychology point of view, is that the boy would grow up with and go out with the men of the tribe in order to hunt the food and to show them how to use a bow or to use whatever sort of thing we're using here, to show them and to skill them and to give them sort of a sense of skill and ownership and part of their part of skill into the tribe. So then they would feel this worthwhile purpose of being part of something. I'm not saying all those boys don't have that connection with their men, with the men in their life, but it's a big part of the boys that I do work with don't have a great sense of link with their fathers most of the time. Now, sometimes there's also a link with the mother, and they use it as a distractive mechanism because they're in some type of freeze response and they disassociate, and they can find solace in gaming because they don't have to feel anything because they're engaged into it. So there's that component. But if we go back to that father aspect, you know, if the father's not willing to engage or is not engaging because they're working or they're dealing with their own stuff, that's a complete different matter. But it's their awareness of how can I start to find another figure in their life. And I don't think that's a problem. I feel like we all can find other figures, like especially young boys that go into boxing gyms or Brazilian jiu-jitsu or swimming teams or, I don't know, painting or dance, whatever it is that the boy wants to do, that they find their father within a coach or they find their father in another fatherly figure. And then they can start to come out of that hole, but they've got to want to do that. You know, you can't force them to come out of their little cave. You've got to just leave little tidbits, and hopefully they start to want to come out of it, because eventually they're going to struggle with anxiety, social interaction, probably low mood, and using all different things. And then, just like me at the beginning of my journey, you get into that hole enough, you're going to want to make that change. And then that's where they can start to find that. Don't know if that answered that question.
Yeah,
tried to.
No, I think that's great. I think it's like, no, I think you did a great job. I think it's like what you're describing is like, we know that you love adventure because you're on these games and you're playing them, and they're adventurous and they're about heroes and they're about slaying the enemy, slaying the dragon, you know, and they're fun. It's like, and then life, there is adventure too. And we need you to come out and play in the adventure of this life, because for the sake of humanity, we need you. Like, you're a worthy player in life. So please come out and play. Like, we want to love you. We want to see you do your best. We want to like see you challenged and take on the burden of being. And like, we want to see you be the best possible man that you could be. And so like, yeah, I think it's like not taking away their love of adventure is the thing that I think that we can use to get them to come out and actually have the real adventure, not the fantasy adventure. It's like, we know that that's a good thing. If we can harness that and twist it and turn it towards reality, we may have like a force of young men for good.
Yeah. Wow. That's so well. How can they get back into their own story? You know, something like that.
Right. Yeah. What if you're a real player in a real game?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you are right now, you know?
Yeah.
There are old ladies who need to be helped across the street. They're looking for a hero to help them. You know, there are people out there who need your help, like strong-shouldered people like you. Like, let's go.
Yeah. Awesome. I think that's amazing. It's like, what do you want? What do you want out of life? And people are like, I don't know what I want. What is my skill? What is my edge? I don't know these things. Like, I think wishing wells, like I heard someone say this, I feel like wishing wells are really great. I think wishing wells work as well. And the reason I say wishing wells work is not because of the the magic. I believe it's because when you're wishing for something, you're actually saying what you really want.
Yeah.
If you're wishing for, like, I don't know, to be a multi-billionaire, you're not really wishing for anything. But if you're wishing for, I want to have self-worth, or I want to feel good every day, I want to be healthy, you're knowing what you want. So, like, you just know. Then I feel like sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes when you flick that in there, you flick the coin into the wishing well, you're like, I'm actually manifesting, and I'm knowing now what I want. What can I do? What steps can I take in order to create this?
Yeah. Speak what you want. Say it out there.
Yeah, completely, man. Completely.
Mate, how do we get on your train? How do we keep in contact with you? If someone is interested in working with you, for instance, how would a person go about doing that?
I think my Instagram, probably. Instagram. TikTok is more my funnier stuff. Not funnier stuff, but I just muck around on there. Just about my journeys from London to Australia. My little change, but Ryan Rose Evans on all my socials. And then my podcast is obviously due out in March as well at the same time. So your episode's going to be one of the first episodes. So I'm super excited about that.
Love it. What's the podcast called?
We haven't found like an exact set title yet, because we're still like, I'm in an iron between them. There's some that we like, but we don't love just as yet. But so far, we're just Ryan Rose Evans podcast at the moment.
Rose from the dead. Rose
from the dead.
Rose up. Rose. I don't know.
We're liking it at the moment.
Roses,
so if anyone has any ideas that listens to this, I'd love like your inputs on anything. If you've heard anything, it'd be awesome. But we've got scoundrels in session, because London is a scoundrel term, and then also everything in between. Everything in between is also one that's come up.
Wow, that's good. I tell you what you should do.
I like the Zaddy zone. That's
yeah,
good.
It's fun and silly. I mean, what you could do is like release an episode just as a taste test and ask your audience, like, what do you want? What do you think it should be called? Like, and see if maybe people could, your audience could pick your name for you, and that could be really good.
I love that idea.
Them.
I will definitely put that forward. I love that idea. I feel like that's getting them involved as well. So anyway, yeah, thank you so much. And thank you so much for chatting, Luke, and being open and vulnerable and having me on. I really appreciate it, man, and love what you do.
Appreciate the vulnerability back, and appreciate you telling your story. Once again, like when I came on your podcast, looking forward to hearing it. I feel like we could talk for 3 hours, but this isn't Joe Rogan, so we only talk for an hour here, and it's a joy, mate. So thank you very much for your generosity of spirit, and for coming on the Zaddy Zone.
Thank you.